back to the next episode as promised. My good friend Jack. It's been a long time in the making, like most of these episodes, if I'm going to be honest, but we got it going. We got it rolling. And I really appreciate you coming out here. So, without further ado, I love when my guests introduce themselves, let you get all the excitement. Jump right in, Jack. Who are you?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Yankee. I know it's been a long
For
time
sure.
coming, and it's exciting to be here. So my name is Jack Resnick. I'm the principal of Platinum Realty Advisors. We are a consultant and leasing firm, specifically focusing on subsidized housing properties, better known as Section 8, or the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We've been in the business since about 2013, strictly focusing on Baltimore City and the surrounding areas. And we're focused on adding value to landlords and investors through utilizing properly the Section 8 voucher program or the subsidized housing programs in general. There's more than just Section 8.
Really?
Believe it or not. So since 2013, we've helped a little over 10,000 voucher holders and their families find homes,
Wow.
simultaneously adding an immense amount of value to our landlord clients by long-term stable tenants, guaranteed rental income, clear recourse in the case of any issues, and just providing a very good, stable base for many of our clients to start building their portfolio off of. And when you have that guaranteed income or that reliable income, it's easier to scale quicker. Always knowing that there's a tenant waiting once you buy that next house and once it's ready, there's always a tenant waiting to get in. The housing programs will always pay fair market rent or a bit of a premium above that. So it offers peace of mind to our landlord clients, knowing that they can scale fast, find tenants quickly, always make sure we're maximizing the rent for them as well. And for the tenant side, adding value to the tenants as well by helping them navigate through the process, being attuned to what their needs are specifically. Um, and on the PHA side, on the housing side, helping them kind of bridge the gap between landlord and tenant to help make the process easier, more streamlined, and just kind of flow. I'm sure you've heard the horror stories of dealing with PHAs and housing
That was the horror
general,
stories myself directly.
and tenants also, it's really all three of the parties, tenant, landlord, and PHA, have horror stories of dealing with each of the other parties, and I feel like that's where we're really able to bridge the gap and add that value.
So before we really get into it, and I think that was a very good synopsis of a lot we're going to talk about today, and I appreciate that. Like, I think you could probably do probably like 10 to 15 episodes just on subsidy, and I think it's a very big question these days. So before we get into any of that, how did you get into leasing? That's usually it's like, I'm becoming a debt broker or a principal. Why did you pick up leasing specifically?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I was running a business in New York in 2012, and it was an interesting industry. It was very niche, and we decided to pivot and kind of look for something new. And I came down. I was living in New York at the time, and I came down to Baltimore for the weekend. Ran into a friend who at the time was one of the principals of Blue Ocean Realty, and they were a lot smaller at the time. So small, in fact, that he was doing the in-house leasing for the company. It was probably 500-600 units at the time. And they were growing to a point and scaling their business to a point where it no longer made sense for him to do it. And they were hiring and they were growing. And he told me about it.
He was a third party. He worked directly for.
No, no, no. He was one of the principals. He was one of the original Blue Ocean
Oh,
partners.
wow, no, a principal should not be doing leasing.
Exactly. Well, at the time, again, looks a lot different than it does today.
Rare.
And he introduced me to the business. I had some wonderful people, so I made the decision to move to Baltimore, try it out, knowing that eventually we'd want to start buying our own properties, obviously for the same reason. And I had some great, great friends and people in town that helped me get started and gave me the units to lease, gave me the direction and the guidance on just how the overall process works. So that was 2013. There was no existing leasing business similar to what we were doing at the time. So it was all trial and error, and there was a lot of error and a lot of trials. So around 2016, it actually hit me that this could be a money-making business. It could be lucrative if done in a certain way. And that's when kind of things started taking off. 2017, we kind of redid our back end. 2018, we started hiring our first employees. But mainly, we saw the need in those first few years for what we were doing. There was an immense need for it. And this was before It obviously existed. This was before Zillow was popular, and it was before, you know, iPhones, I guess, were standard for our clientele. So they didn't have access to all the units that they potentially could have access to. The housing office was not as advanced as they are today, meaning everything was still pen and paper. There were no email submissions. Everything was literally done at the housing office. All paperwork submissions, lease signings, anything you can imagine had to be done in person. So back then, it was even more time consuming than it is now. A lease signing would take 3 hours because you're not only,
Person, yeah.
they're reviewing all of the documents that, are, I'm sure your viewers know, the HAP documents that you're required to submit at the beginning. They would review everything at the end. So at one time, and if there was a discrepancy or a T wasn't crossed or an I wasn't dotted, you literally had to run to the management office or get the landlord down there. Like DocuSign wasn't that popular, wasn't
Right.
being utilized. Um, so there was a bigger need back then because everything was done in person. Um, and it was just an extremely time-consuming process. As the years progressed and they got a little bit kind of more with it, the more sophisticated they kind of quote unquote sophisticated they got, the more issues still pop up. So it's still a very time-consuming process, but now it's more about knowing how to navigate the new steps they have and kind of to sum it up, without getting too deep into it, there are always going to be the pitfalls of dealing with the PHAs, and those pitfalls are going to constantly be changing based on how their process is changing or adjusting. So it's just important to be at the forefront in identifying what those issues can be, getting in front of them, and knowing how to move through them as quickly as possible. So when they change over a documentation submission process, you have to, like, off the first 2 or 3 that you do, you'll notice the same recurring issues that they find with your documents or they find with the submission, and you correct those. Or if you notice they change their inspection process and you're seeing the same repetitive inspection issues, units passing as the wrong bedroom size, inspectors missing amenities, things like that. So you have to identify those and kind of jump out in front of them to keep things moving. So, um, back then, as is now, there are always those issues that you have to be aware of with housing, and it's never going to be perfect. Um, and that's kind of what I spend personally a lot of my time on is dealing directly with the housing office representatives and kind of always being trying to be 6 months to a year ahead. What our landlords can expect as far as new voucher issuance. What can we expect as far as payment standards? What can we expect as far as any changes to the process? And also giving them valuable feedback from, our day-to-day
Experience.
business, which we
Yeah.
get a lot of, hands-on experience from all three sides, landlord, PHA,
And
and
tenant.
tenant,
Yeah.
to really somewhat lobbying them to kind of, do what needs to be done to just make the process easier on everyone.
I think it's so important, and I'm gonna jump right into some sniper questions that are just a lot of times when I ask questions because things that, like, I personally wanna know, and I assume that other people do too, is the back end of the PHA office just the Wild West? Is it the same with the mayor's office? Like, I think some landlords get that impression. It may not be like that. They may have some rhyme or like a rhythm there. Is there a reason why people feel like it's just every day is something else there when it comes to inspections or when it comes to rent offers? Like, is what is going on in the back end to what you could share and hopefully give some clarity to the owners to just understand what's going on?
No, it's a good question. I think each program has its unique challenges. But I mean, in short, yeah, it is kind of like the Wild West. Not like there, it's literal chaos, obviously, but it's a constantly changing industry. There are new rules and regulations. Everything is HUD mandated. They have high employee turnover in general. And it's usually always about who's running that specific department. If you have someone solid at the head of the leasing contracting department, let's say at Section 8, which is one that, landlords will deal with on a daily basis. That's kind of the forward-facing department. Depending who's at the top, who's running it, how well staffed they are, that's the quality of work that you're going to see. Um, the mayor's office, all the third-party programs, I think it's a little bit tougher. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8, is a relatively well-organized and well-run program,
Their website's a lot better these days.
even though it may not seem like that. So we feel like, they really did pay attention to what landlords have been asking for the last few years, which is huge. And they are operating more efficiently, I think, than they ever have. They have new heads of several departments there that are making a big difference. Some people retired, some people came in. And the new head of leasing and contracting has a lot of good property management and real estate experience. He's dealt with what we deal with on the private side, so he's fully aware of what we deal with, and now he's seeing what it looks like on their end. So
Hmm.
that's been a huge help in just expediting things and a lot of the silly little issues that used to come up that it used to take even us, it would take us a day or two to resolve. He's been really hands-on with making sure that those issues that translate, obviously time is money, that translate into landlord's lost rent, even if it gets pushed a day, 2, or a week, whatever that issue may be, just to move very quickly to resolve those. So to answer your question, it's certainly not the wild, wild west. It's just a constant churn of employee turnover, new regulations, process changes, especially with Section 8. They have a lot of flexibility under their move to work program with which their funding is allocated to now to make a lot of these changes without any outside approval, basically. That could be inspection changes like den or finished base, things, those types of words that we hear a lot. They have a lot of flexibility on changing those definitions. They have flexibility on increasing or decreasing fair market rents as long as it's within the HUD payment standards. They can really do what they want to do, basically. Um, and they do track a lot of this stuff. I think they do have some decent data that tells them where they need to improve or what they need to change. So it's a real challenge to stay on top of that, but that's a lot of what we see in these delays and in these changes and in like the general feeling that it's absolute chaos behind the scenes is directly correlated to a lot of these issues that are plagued that all the programs, happen to experience.
Right, and I think I spoke about this on my last podcast. I don't think it's not necessarily, I should say, a Section 8 or C whatever, CHA's issue. I think it's in general, government-ran
Hun-
systems are not motivated. I mean, obviously, there's motivation, but you have to really create it versus, third-party owners or vendors. There's a lot more motivation because there's a lot more accountability.
Correct.
So that's to your point, I definitely understand what you're saying there, which is why if people are overwhelmed, they just quit and they have a new person trying to get trained in, and then they have a million emails coming their way. So I definitely hear that. I think another trend I've been seeing to your point about them deciding on where rent should be is that maybe it's certain areas, but I have heard owners tell me, like, "I don't know what's going on. My rent offer for the same property has gone down by $300." And I'm trying to get an idea, is this actually an issue? Is it more case by case basis? Is it a new trend that subsidies like Section 8 are seeing? Is it just Section 8? Is it also the mayor's office? There's a lot of questions that I know people have today when they're looking to buy. They're very concerned.
And they should. I don't think they should be concerned, but they should be aware of what's actually going on. So each party, the mayor's office, BRHP, Section 8, all different programs determine their rents in different ways. So they all use the HUD determined payment standards, which are set annually. Each payment standard comes out around this time of year. 2026 payment standards, fair market rent payment standards, which is published, and they're effective January 1, even though their fiscal year starts October 1st. So for Section 8, as that's the biggest program that most landlords utilize, we'll start with that one. They have recently utilized a program called Area Real Estate Analysis. The acronym is Area Rents, basically. And
Looks like a Zillow. What is this?
it's a private company.
Okay.
It's a private company out of Chicago. And I think it's Philly, New Orleans, and Los Angeles currently use this type of rent. They call it a rent study. So what this company does is basically go into they'll come into the market wherever they're hired to do. They'll use federal data. I believe they'll use federal data. I'm not sure if they have access to it, but they'll use as much data, outside data as they can, and then they'll actually send their own representatives to in this case, Baltimore. And they'll do a deep dive on area rents, assisted rents, meaning voucher assisted rents versus non-assisted rents, crime statistics, access to schools, access to transportation, access to grocery stores. All of this stuff is kind of factored in to this rent study. They'll look at a unit with a dishwasher, a unit without a dishwasher, and see what the rent difference is. They'll look at a unit with a parking pad and without a parking pad, and we'll try and determine what that difference is in rent. I'm not a huge fan of this new rent study. I think it's really tough for a company that's not local and not a government entity to really understand the Baltimore market. It's unique to Los Angeles or New Orleans or Philly, in the block by block factor, which Baltimore is known for. So rents can drastically change within the same zip code,
Is that
depending
going to
on the
help
quality of
people?
area.
Meaning, if I have a property, for example, in Holland's Market, right? But they're pulling me comps from South Payson, right? That's gonna hurt me. Versus if I have a property past Greenmount Avenue in the Charles Village area, if they're pulling comms from Charles Village, that's gonna help me. So are you seeing it only like, are they only having a negative effect with this new system that they're using?
So that's a great question. And the answer is no. There are positives to it. In certain areas, we've seen rents rise. It's so I'll tell you, it's a little too early.
Right,
I'll tell you like this: we retain every rent offer that we get, and we separate it based by zip code, amenities, bedroom, and bathroom size. So we kind of track the data and see where the rents are trending. Being that this was just implemented about 8 weeks ago or less, less than 2 months, we're still keeping an eye to try and figure out where things are dropping the most, where things are staying the same, and where rents are increasing, basically. And I think to answer your question, yes, it will help in certain areas. They do say that they did what's called a small area fair market rent study, which is within zero point 0.5 miles, zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 miles of the subject unit. So I think it's TBD, basically, how much it'll affect. Like, a good example is your Hollands Market South Payson example. See how much that helps. But they're basically using a lot more data, and within this data, it's important to note that they're grading areas. They're creating submarkets, basically, of submarkets of opportunity,
right,
similar to what BRHP does,
correct.
right? So there's high opportunity, sound opportunity, moderate, some, and then reduced opportunity, and it's
What do they
self-reported.
judge that based on?
Same crime statistics, access to schools, access to public transportation, access to stores. Obviously, AMI, area median income, is a big
Correct.
one that they factor in, but it's just a lot more data than they used to use for the fair market, for rent studies. It used to just be fair market rents. What are assisted rents? We're paying 105% of FMR this year. These are our rents. And they used to just go Section 8, which now is affordablehousing.com, but they have a separate, like a subsite of affordablehousing.com specifically for public housing authorities to use, and that's how they would pull their comps up until this new rent study was utilized.
Is it gonna slow it down because they have to wait on a third party?
No, so the rents are already in. So they have their full system built out for these rents. So it's actually gonna make it a lot faster because there's no more rent reviews,
Yeah, it takes,
right?
what was it, 5 days on the subsidy? I know they have a new system, I tell you, it's like 5 days.
5 to 7 business days.
Man, they should hire me. I'll do it in a second.
Right. So it does take about 15 to 20 minutes to really do the full rent determination. It's not that complicated. They just have, again, they have a lot of volume, and there's a
Correct.
backlog there, but it should make it a little bit more streamlined. There are new amenities also, right? There are dollar value amenities that up until this study was implemented, they used to pay for, washer and dryer and central air and ceiling fans and a microwave and a dishwasher. Um, those are no longer considered dollar value amenities.
So what are they considered, anything?
So they claim that they're baked into the rent study, meaning they determine that a standard unit in the 2025 market should have or will have a washer and dryer and central air. I haven't gotten a great explanation. Definitely not good enough to be able to explain it to you. Doesn't really make
Someone has
sense.
radiated heat, they're gonna offer less?
Exactly. So these are same questions
Hey, I don't mind if
that
they don't.
we haven't gotten answers to. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the question is, so we're starting to pull washers and dryers from some units to see if there's a difference between units with washers and dryers, units without washers and dryer. But basically, the amenities that they're paying for now are amenities that they do not consider standard in every rental unit. And those can be what they call a fully renovated unit, which they mean gutted to the studs, flooring, roof, windows, kitchen, electrical, mechanical, HVAC, brand new. Parking pad or a garage, security system or an alarm system.
That's good to know because that's not even expensive.
Correct.
Get Simply Safe or
Correct. And it's worth about $50 a month, roughly. So even a
the
subscription service, you're paying
$30.
$35 a month. So it definitely makes sense. Also, tenants love it, obviously. So it's a nice amenity for them to have as well.
And you do, squatters.
Correct. Especially when the unit's vacant. Definitely helps. Um, so there is parking pad, finished basement. They pay for either a fully finished basement or partial. I think it's about 35 for partial, $50 for full. Parking pad is $35 for a parking pad or an assigned spot, $50 for a garage or covered or underground parking. Um, Fully renovated is 50, partially renovated is 35. They officially pay $50 for a den. However, we've seen two in a den or one in a den. We've seen them kind of keep it. Used to be about $75 to $100 for a den. We've seen them stick to those amounts more so than the $50. So a lot is changing. A
A
lot
whole
is
new
certainly
system.
changing. Sorry?
It's a whole new system.
It's a brand new system.
Yeah,
New rent determination system, new amenities. They were supposed to implement this new inspection system called Inspire,
I saw that.
and they pushed that a couple months. We don't know when that's going to start.
Is that system worse or just more organized?
Again, everything remains to be seen. You never really know how it's going to look in action. They tout it as strictly health and safety as opposed to cosmetic. I'm sure a lot of your viewers will know how frustrating these Section 8 violation lists can be, especially when they're focusing on minor cosmetic issues that will have no effect on
The grass in the back.
quality of life, quality of life for the tenant, quality of unit. So it remains to be seen how that's interpreted and how that actually looks in action. From what we've seen, any inspection change takes a long time for all the inspectors to actually get on board with it and kind of inspect in a uniformed way. And that's really the purpose of Inspire. HQS, which is what they're going off now, the housing quality standards, is really open for interpretation. It can be very subjective. One inspector will see something that the inspector won't, and vice versa.
Oh, I've had that. A reinspection, they give me another list, and I'm like,
Correct.
what was this before?
It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Everyone sees something else. And the purpose of Inspire was to kind of uniform it. Like, these are the actual items that we're looking for, health and safety, so chipping paint, smoke and CO detectors, um, outlet covers, just anything that could be considered health and safety, as opposed to, hey, your base trim is missing at the bottom of this door, or, your door is binding, or you have, your grass in the backyard needs to be cut a bit, items like that in the grand scheme of things are not huge, but when you're trying to get an inspection passed and every dollar matters and every day matters, and they find these items on top of all the health and safety items that you have to do, it really makes a big difference. But I think it remains to be seen if Inspire makes it easier or harder on landlords. They've already started slowly but surely kind of updating their health and safety regulations, with basement bedrooms, and mainly smoke and carbon monoxide detectors.
Right.
Smoke detector in Baltimore City, it's 10 years sealed in every bedroom, and a smoke CO combo outside of the bedrooms, and then one on each floor. Um,
So now you need a 10-year seal in each bedroom.
Correct. And each
Before it was just on each floor.
Correct. You need a combo on each floor, and you don't need a CO in the bedroom. You need a smoke with a 10-year sealed battery in each bedroom. Um, the county's had that for a while. The county's always required having the county. I'm sorry, the county has also updated their requirements to include a smoke in each bedroom. But in Baltimore City, it's only required to have a 10-year sealed battery. Baltimore County requires that it be hardwired and interconnected. So they kind of took one extra step forward.
What about the non-hardwired interconnected?
So that's a great question. Those will work in the county. They're hard to find for some reason. We've had a lot of clients that having trouble finding combos, smoke CO combos that are interconnected electronically as opposed to being hardwired and
I had that down.
interconnected. So they've been harder to find. There's a model out there that is just, for some reason, it trips false alarms a lot of the time. So we've had to stop using those. We're looking for an alternative. So yes, they do have to be hardwired, but interconnected. They can be wirelessly interconnected as opposed to fully interconnecting them through the hardwire system. I'm not an electrician. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly how it works, but there is a bit of an easier way to do it. We've had trouble finding those smoke CO combos that we use to avoid that costly installation of the full hardwired or interconnected smoke CO detectors in Baltimore County.
Right, because it's easy for them to say to have it hardwired. That just means another $10,000, depending on your property.
Just, they don't care what it costs. The landlords, they just have their regulations. They want us to stick to them. So basically, they've started to implement these minor changes that I think are related to the Inspire system, but we'll see when that actually plays out. So yeah, to get back to your original question, it's a brand new program basically. A lot of changes. That's why I think it's translating out to a bit of a slower voucher market overall. Any client that deals with this stuff on a daily basis will tell you that it's been a lot harder to lease, a lot fewer vouchers on the market, definitely new vouchers, which we rely on, right? You always have to rely on a steady stream of new vouchers, meaning new to the program, never had a Section 8 voucher before. They're on the last waiting list that was open, for tenants to sign up on, and now they're finally getting their vouchers, along with a combination of tenants moving within the program. So Baltimore City Section 8 will get anywhere from 150 to 200 move requests per month. A little less than half of those actually end up going through.
That's nothing.
It's a very low amount. So that's that's why it's more important to always have that second source of new vouchers being issued to the program.
Correct.
So that's all but stopped.
The new vouchers all but stopped right now.
Correct.
Is this because of the federal government or just because of this new Inspire program and the new program out of Chicago?
I think it's a combination of everything. There's no official. So I had a meeting with the upper management of the Housing Choice Voucher Program last week. They are still waiting. They don't even have their approved 2026 budget yet. They request a certain amount, and they generally get anywhere from 95 to 97% of that requested budget. As of now, they don't know what it's going to be approved for just yet. They're working off the 2025 budget at the moment. Um, they really didn't have much information to share about the budget for
'Cause
2026.
they don't even know.
They don't know, and
Right.
I think they are concerned to an extent with the administration, even though all the proposed cuts and everything that was previously on the table are not on the table any longer. But I think they're anticipating some sort of budget, not shortfall, but some sort of budget cut, whether that be to administrative costs or operating expenses, which they need also just as much as they need the rent to pay the landlords. They need to make sure that they have operating expenses to be fully staffed and pay their own bills. So I think they're pulling back also to pad their OpEx accounts. I think like I said, with Section 8, when they're working off this move to work plan, they can get very creative with the money that's allocated to them and where they want to allocate it to.
So what does it mean move to work? Explain that if you don't mind.
So it's an initiative that came from HUD about 7 or 8 years ago that was implemented, and it's basically it's a voucher with kind of wraparound services, basically. That if tenants want an option to go through the home buyers program, or tenants want options for employee training, whether that be skilled or unskilled. So it's kind of a wraparound service. Tenants can select whether they want to utilize these services when they get their voucher or not. So don't necessarily force them to use it. There are some stipulations through certain parts of the Made to Work program that they have to at least pursue gainful employment. They have to volunteer or put in some sort of effort or volunteer hours to be able to stay eligible for their voucher. The new administration or the current administration, wanted to propose those work requirements, um, which got got a lot of pushback. And they excluded elderly, they excluded disabled, but there's still a large part of the population that would probably have a trouble kinda dealing with that
I don't think it's gonna go
navigating
through.
that.
I think you need 2/3 of the Senate to I don't think they're gonna approve that.
No, nobody thinks it's going to be approved, but just the proposal, I think, had something to do with what was already being done with the Move to Work program. And it's always been the goal, I think, of HUD. Obviously, the goal of the Housing Choice Voucher program is not lifelong, assistance. It is to help tenants become self-sustain or participants become self-sustaining and kinda take that big financial pressure of rent, of that one bill that a lot of people struggle with, to make it easier for them to pursue whatever they need to do, whether
Right.
it's school or jobs, uh,
And it's theoretical and it's practically speaking. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, right.
There's nothing wrong. Listen, it is what it is, when you have, a large assistance program that people truly, truly need, and, you have low income tenants, or that or the large portion of the program participants. They're on the program because they need to be, and it's not like some of these people can't just go out and get a $50,000 or $60,000 a year job. It's difficult, and I don't think it's been eye-opening doing this for the last 13 years to see what our clientele deal with on a daily basis, and how they grow up, and how, just the neighborhoods they live in and the opportunities that they have. And it's extremely eye-opening, and it's sad to see sometimes. You get a bunch of really, really wonderful people that are motivated to do and find and go, but unfortunately just sometimes don't know where to start, or don't even have that minimal guidance to understand how to start and how to get the training that they need to do whatever it is that they want to do. So it's a much needed program. Just like any government program, you're always going to have people that abuse it. But for the most part, it is utilized by people that do need it. It's not necessarily a wasteful program compared to a lot of the other government programs, because you see direct results. You lease a unit, the government pays for the unit, the person is housed in that unit, person moves out of that unit, the government does not pay for that unit anymore. So it's definitely it's less of a risk for wasteful spending in
Correct.
housing choice voucher program and HUD overall than some of the other government programs. But to all of a sudden, after I don't know how many years the housing choice voucher program has existed, say, okay, now you're going to get a voucher, but you have to work, you have to report, you have to find, you have to do. It's just not so realistic. So
Right. And I think the challenge for landlords, I mean, I'm sure you know this, is that what is the alternatives, right? You have other alternatives out there that in today's market just doesn't work. I was just reading a report from the Baltimore Banner. I believe 15,000 jobs since January was lost in Maryland. I think Maryland's the number one state for job loss when it comes specifically to government jobs. So to your point, like they're being pushed to get jobs, but there's actually now a lack of jobs. And then if you want to evict someone, that's at least 4 months. So if they're a market tenant, that's not paying. So there becomes this kind of like echo chamber of just what do you do, right? And I don't know, like, is there really an answer for landlords aside from just waiting around and seeing where subsidy goes?
I mean, there's always an answer. A lot of landlords don't have the luxury of waiting around. And I think the biggest thing is now, especially for new buyers coming into the market or landlords that have units turning over that have been occupied for a while, is just being very realistic and conservative with your rent estimates. And if you thought, if you're getting $1,700 for a unit, let's say for a two-bedroom unit that you leased in 2023 and it's turning over and you have to release it now or in 2026, I think you have to really look at what the market's doing and know that that rent may be 1450 today or 1400 or 1500. And for new buyers coming in, realtors want to sell or, people just want to sell them houses, right? And you have a lot of out-of-state buyers coming into Baltimore or even local buyers. And they'll be like, hey, this unit 2 years ago from Section 8 was getting $2,300 a year, $2,200 a month. That's what you can bank on right now when in fact that same rent amount right now might be 1850. So it's very important now. What we've been advising all of our clients to do is just be, whatever conservative number you think you're going to get, take 10% off of that. And then if that works, you're good. If you're not, then it doesn't work. And there's definitely a reckoning that's coming in Baltimore City, and people are going to have to wake up to it and wake up to it fast. And I don't think enough people see yet what's going on. Um, I've spoken to a lot of our larger clients that may not be involved in the day-to-day leasing part of their overall real estate businesses, and they really haven't noticed it yet. But we see it day to day that, a house that we get 2,200 for is now getting 1,875. So we've seen an average drop in some areas about $400 to $500 a month, which is a significant chunk of change.
Is there specific unit types that you're seeing the biggest cuts or locations?
Locations.
Okay.
It's specific locations. 21213 Bel Air Edison, we've seen a noticeable drop.
Does that include '06 or just 13?
13. Sorry. It's very zip code based. Even though the areas of opportunity don't stick to one zip code, a certain area of opportunity can cover multiple zip codes. But because it's such a small area FMR, it's more noticeable in kind of more
And
smaller
does
areas.
that include the 4x4? Are we talking only
So we tend to stay away from the real rough parts. Our theory always has been the quality of the area will attract the quality of the tenant. Plenty of people lease in the 4x4 in the rougher areas, but as a tenant placement company, we have a lot of liability for the tenants that we place and reputation. Also, you definitely don't want to get a reputation for placing poor quality tenants. Poor quality just means obviously don't pay the rent, don't maintain the property, have issues with them day one. But what we've seen in the 21213 is a house that would get, a two-bedroom, for example, two bed, two bath, fully renovated, nice house, that was getting 1750 to 1800 up until 6 or 7 months ago, is now in the 14s to 15s.
Whoa.
We have been able to push with these new amenities. It's been very important to make sure that all these new amenities were marked, parking pad, security system, and all of that. So that's part of what I touched on at the beginning of just knowing what's changing so you can get in front of it and make sure, in this case, that all the amenities are being counted to maximize the landlord's rent.
Well, I'm getting a security system after this. That much I could tell you.
Seriously. So this one specific unit, the initial offer was 1485, and it turns out they missed a couple items. They missed it was a finished basement, the fully renovated mark, the security system, and it went from 1485 to 1610.
It's a lot of money though on
A
it.
lot. It was $1,500 a year, but over a 2-year lease, that's $3,000, and these single family rentals don't make millions of dollars anymore. They never did, but obviously there used to be much more of a delta between debt service and expenses and free cash flow, and that's
Getting into the refi game.
correct. And I don't think that exists really anymore. So every penny does matter. Every dollar matters these days. So yeah, we've seen the biggest drop in the 21213, but then right over the 21213. So you have, this is Mayfield Avenue, for example, right? 800 block of Mayfield, right above Erdman. 1485, we pushed to 1610. Then you're seeing the 3200 blocks of Kenyon, Kentucky, Pelham, kind of all that run down there. Same numbers, 1450, 1600, 1450, 1500.
Pelham is 06 or 13?
Pelham is 13.
Still 13. It's right before the park.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Still 13. So you'll see the 2-bedroom numbers there range anywhere from 1450 to 1500, 1550. And 3 bedrooms that used to get, wasn't always the highest. The 06 was always higher than the 13. The 18 and the 12 were always higher than the 13. But 1950, 2000, 21, 22 for 3 bedrooms. Those same 3 bedrooms are now 1750, 1800, 1825. So we've seen a noticeable drop there.
That's even before this new program is really implemented.
Correct. They are utilizing this rent study now. So they're no longer using Go Section 8 to pull comps the way they used to. If for whatever reason landlords really push back and the rent offer just doesn't make sense and it doesn't make sense to them, they can still use Go Section 8. But from my understanding, recently, the comps that they're pulling from Go Section 8, if they get significant pushback on a rent offer, are coming back even lower than the new rent study that they're using.
Really?
This is what I was told. I haven't seen it myself yet. But then right over into the 06, let's say on Ehrman Avenue, right? If you go up
Which is
there,
a worse block than
not a wonderful block. We got
Yeah.
$23.95 for a two bedroom with a den.
Are you joking me?
I am not. And then 06 on Benton Heights, a little bit further out. Just today, we signed a two bedroom, no den, 2-bed, 1.5 bath, finished basement, nice house on Benton Heights Avenue for $19.75. When we're fighting for our lives, 4 blocks down, we're looking at $600-700 more. Correct. And these 2-bedroom rents are significantly higher than some 3-bedroom offers. So you see that a lot when they're transitioning over to a new system. It is indicative, though, that certain areas are obviously going to either stay the same or grow rent-wise. The 21212 and the 21218 zip codes have always been strong rent zip codes.
It's interesting because 1-2 overall is not that great.
But it borders some very nice neighborhoods.
Charles Village, I know.
Fall into, which could help those comps pull. There's no real rhyme or reason, and they'll never give you the full rhyme or reason for how it actually works behind the scenes. We'll really just use the data that's available to us, which is mainly the rent offers that we see and the houses that we rent. So they're all over the place. 21229, which is also a big area of investment.
Used to be very hot. I don't know how it is now, but
yes, it's kind of evened out. It's not as bad. Probably a 5-10% drop. So those 3 bedrooms that were getting, 22 are now getting 1900 to 2000, 2050. So it's still within the ballpark. Obviously, we'd like to see more, but you haven't seen that $400 or $500 drop like we see in Bel Air Edison. Parts of the 21216 and 21217, which is West Baltimore, some of the tougher parts. Those rents have dropped even further. They're rated as reduced opportunity.
right.
So they
1-5, I feel like also got affected now.
certain parts of the 1.5, definitely. 1.5 is an anomaly because they're really rough parts, as opposed even more so than any other zip code. There's some really, really nice parts, some really rough parts. But even the rough parts aren't as bad as the rough parts
Or 1-7
of the 1.7 or the 1.3 or
Fulton, yeah, whatever.
So, but unfortunately, even though there are some really nice parts of the 1.5, housing has designated most of the 1.5 as reduced opportunity.
I remember Keyworth and all those blocks were getting crazy rents.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a time when housing did want to incentivize landlords, which would be logical, to buy in these areas, right? And the more distressed areas and the rougher areas to improve those areas. But housing has never wanted to be a driving factor of the market, not with tenants, not with rents, and not with development or progress. They never want,
Ironically,
right? Correct. But they never officially want to be that driving force. So they want to encourage. So they did have a time there that they wanted to, vacant units were becoming an issue. So they wanted to incentivize landlords to buy next to vacants and renovate that and pay more in certain neighborhoods. That didn't really pan out. So that now more they're focusing on incentivizing program participants, tenants, to just rent in nicer neighborhoods, basically. So again, to answer your question, it's still all over the place. We're still getting a handle on what rents will look like because that's a lot of value that we bring to our clients. If they're looking at a house, they know they can always text me and say, "Hey, Jack, 3 bed, 2 bath. This is the address. What am I getting?" And we could just in 2 seconds be able to give them within $5 what they're going to get. And right now we can't do that. We're just being, like I said, uber conservative. If our most recent rent in the area was 1,500, I'll tell them 1,350. If the most recent rent was 2,000, I'll tell them 1,800. Just to be really, really conservative until things
You're gonna
even out, until there's an identifiable pattern that we can see.
to your point, like, you're doing the leasing side of it, and for anyone listening, if you're not sure why you need a vendor, this should be an indication. I mean, I know as myself, as just a real estate agent dealing with multifamily, that there's information that other people just don't know. The information on what vacancy actually is something that I know, and I know CoStar is off. No offense, CoStar, I appreciate you, but it is what it is. CoStar said that there's an increase 3% in rents this year, and I don't even need to say anything based on this conversation. That is not accurate. Maybe Class A is pushing everything else up, but that's just in my opinion, even in Class A, that's not what I'm seeing when I talk to landlords directly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dealing with so many deals right now where I tried helping them, and I think some I sent your way. I tried helping them to fill their property and not sell at a loss. But unfortunately, they can't do it. And I think that leads into my next question. It's a very simple one. If someone has a renovated unit in a decent area, or even whatever, basically renovated unit in a decent area, about how long is it taking to rent it?
That's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer. When the voucher market slows down, there's more inventory, right? Because they are, whether they like it or not, they are the driving force for a lot of investor properties or areas of investment. So, we're moving units in anywhere from 24 hours to 30 days. So it depends on the quality of the unit, style of renovation, level of renovation, the amenities in the unit, finished basement, central air. Those are big. Those are what tenants look for. Large bedrooms, but mainly good areas. That's really what tenants are focused on now. So because they're also coached by housing, and I think Baltimore, even the voucher programs, like just the tenants themselves, especially ones that have been on the program for many years, they understand, number one, what their voucher is worth. They know what they can get and where they can go, and they 100% deserve it, and they're naturally gravitating towards better areas, right? Nobody wants to walk outside to and duck. No one wants to walk outside and have to worry about their kids crossing the street to go to the store and getting robbed or worse. So, what we're seeing is obviously the nicer units, the more renovated units in nicer areas are gonna be the first in line to go. And then you'll have renovated units and kind of in between areas, or you have some good blocks, some bad blocks. And then last but not least, you have the really renovated unit in a rough neighborhood, which you'll lease. You may not find the best, you know, cleanest tenant in the world. Clean, I say clean background,
Record.
good rental history, all of that. And then last but not least, you have the last tier, which is rough area, unrenovated unit, and those are just sitting and sitting and sitting uh, until you can find someone that either can't get approved anywhere else and just has to take something before their RTA expires, um, or you just find that anomaly of a good tenant that wants to be in that specific neighborhood for whatever the reason is. But it's very important, number one, to understand what tenants are looking for these days and what industry standard is, right? When we started, central air, washer, dryer, stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, they weren't even in the conversation. Now they're very much standard. So understanding, that these are very standard for what voucher participants are looking for these days. And the overall market, I mean, that's industry standard. That's market standard for a renovated unit. That's what they want. If you don't have that, that's fine. But just know you're not being competitive, and it's going to translate to more days on the market. Um, Moving fast, understanding, using a specialist, and using a company that's familiar with the program. So once you do find a tenant, you're moving as quickly and efficiently as possible. Because there's so much inventory out there, tenants are always shopping. They have no penalty whatsoever to just cancel their RTA at any time during the process up until lease signing. They can be at the signing table and just say, "I don't want it anymore." Walk away. They'll get a new voucher, no questions asked, no penalty.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
Landlords can do the same, but we have been lobbying housing for many years to institute some sort of penalty on both sides, or at least a written explanation that has to be signed off on as to why they're canceling because of all you pull the unit off the market, spend money on the inspection, paying another mortgage, you're making another payment because it's off the market for 30 to 45 days, and they walk. So moving through the process quickly, keeping the tenants engaged, updating them every step of the way. Once their RTA is submitted, if literally every 2 or 3 days, our CRM just sends auto messages to our tenants every 2 or 3 days, depending on what stage they're in throughout the process, just to keep them engaged. And if you say, hey, just let us know if you have any questions, they're always going to have a question to ask, and you want them to ask questions. Because if they back out, you're usually going to see it coming. So it's very important to keep them engaged, keep them updated, but also just to move as quickly as possible. So if you submit an RTA and you haven't heard from Section 8 in 4 or 5 business days, whatever the time frame is now to process the RTA and schedule an inspection, you got to follow up. If your unit, one nice thing that the inspections department has been doing a lot lately are virtual inspections. So if you have even a 10-item list
For a reinspection?
for reinspection, not an initial, correct. The initial inspections, the inspectors are always going out in person. But once you have a list, even if it could be 10 items, as long as they are all items that are easily verifiable, that they can see on FaceTime, they will do a virtual inspection for you as soon as those items are done. So you don't have to wait. Yeah, I think the system auto reschedules it for about 10 days out right now.
Yeah.
So obviously if you have a violation that there was no hot water in the unit or the air conditioning wasn't working, they can't do a virtual inspection for that. But the chipping paint, they remove the trash, the door's stuck, the smoke detector not working, washer, whatever the case may be, that's been a huge, huge value add for the program. Just being able to they're available, first of all, almost every day. You just shoot them a text and say, hey, can we do a virtual at this and this unit? Whether that's a bedroom check to verify the correct bedroom size, an amenity check, a reinspection, an annual reinspection.
I think an annual should just go virtual.
They should. So they're really doing a lot of them now. They touted virtual reinspections for annuals as like a big deal, but I think now it's becoming pretty standard. And even in their 2026 and the HCVP 2026 administrative plan, they're officially moving over to virtual inspections for the majority of the reinspections, unless there is something that can't easily be seen through a virtual inspection.
And how does it, I mean, I guess a landlord just have to do it himself in that case.
Correct. So we have a dedicated position within our company. We call him a field coordinator, and he's the one that is in the field all day, making sure that these things happen and happen fast. But just back to what we were talking about, I mean, it's a big part of it, right? If you can get an inspection passed in 3 days instead of 10 or 14, your tenant's going to love you, and they're going to get excited, right? They got to stay excited. If it goes on and it drags on and it's 3 weeks and it's 4 weeks and it's 5 weeks, it's going to get stale, just like any deal.
You're gonna start offering Xboxes for these people.
It doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't?
No, we've been through everything with TVs and moving incentives. Ultimately, tenants can buy that stuff for themselves these days. They just want a nice house and they want it fast. And that's really how to stay competitive. Number one, make sure your market's in line with the unit. Obviously, make sure you're marketing properly. Making sure you're accommodating anytime a tenant wants to see it, because beggars can't be choosers. If there are not a ton of tenants out there, if they want to do a showing at 9 p.m. on a Sunday,
You get it done.
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once you do find a tenant, making sure that you're giving them what they need, whether that's a flexible security deposit, right? We'll look at their income, and if they're not getting deposit assistance, we'll give them a deposit amount that's affordable to them. So that will make them think twice about going to look for a unit that may have no security deposit, or something that's more affordable to them. And then moving fast, making sure the unit's prepped for inspection, making sure you have your lead certificate, your rental license, your property registration. For those that use the Section 8 inspection to obtain their rental license, make sure that the day the unit passes, you're going onto the portal that evening when the results are in the system, you're pulling that pass notice and you're uploading it to get your rental license. So there's no delays for the lease signing. And then we stick to their timeline. If they tell me 3 days to rent offer, 72 hours or 73 hours and 1 minute, we're following up on that rent offer. So yeah, it's not rocket science. Just knowing what you're doing it fast, being a little bit more efficient than you usually would, being flexible with the tenants. And that could mean maybe working with the tenant if you see something on their background that may need explanation. In good times, if it's within your criteria and within your fair housing, within the fair housing policy, you could just deny that application. You might want to go a step further and see if the tenant has a good explanation for that, for which we've seen a lot of times they do. They could have a very reasonable explanation for a failure to pay filing or a rent escrow or a tenant holdover that may, in normal times be an ultimate disqualifier, but now
You don't have a
taking that
choice.
step further.
Yeah.
Security deposits, the economy is what it is. It's tough out there, and expecting low income clientele either way, if they're responsible to pay the deposit on their own as opposed to getting third party assistance to pay a $1,500 deposit when their total monthly income is 900. It's just not prudent. And the deposit is important. They're always going to have some sort of damages and move out, even cleaning, trash. It costs money, but we're here for the cash flow and the rental income, and not to stand on ceremony over security deposit. So don't
Yeah,
get in your head about it.
I agree with you. The amount of money you lose on that rent just waiting for someone to
Correct.
give you a deposit, you already lost that deposit.
And if you get 2-3 years out of the tenant and you manage it well and you get a good rent and you file your rent increase, it'll make sense. But you just have to do whatever you need to do at this point to get tenants in the door, make showings happen, make sure units presentable at showings, clean, no trash, no workers. It really, really helps. First impressions are everything. And unlike the non-voucher market where tenants may start shopping or looking for units, 4 or 5 months in advance of when they're moving, and they'll look at 20 different options to see what makes the most sense for them. Voucher tenants have an expiration date on their RTA. They have to submit it by. They have a 60-day vacate notice sometimes, or even new tenants, once they get their voucher, they have to provide their current landlord with the vacate date. So they don't have all the time in the world. They're eligible for an initial, I think it's 120 days, then 2 30-day extensions after that. So they have a deadline, and you have to work to that deadline. And they understand that sense of urgency, which should be a positive. And you have to, kind of not play on that. Obviously, they have to make that full decision, but be mindful that they have to make decisions, and as long as you move fast, they will stick with you because of that deadline that they have to keep.
Right, the motivations. It's interesting because I was thinking, it's just a trend that I may or may be incorrect about. I've noticed that one-bedroom apartments, I've seen them be so hard to get done, and I was thinking kind of what you were saying earlier about the standards of what units require these days when it comes to, like, washer and dryers. What I was thinking is it that there were some landlords that they thought they were doing things differently, and then they renovated hundreds of units to this standard, that ended up biting themselves in the backside because now they created this new standard, and it's even hard for them to get new one-bedroom vouchers because there's so they created essentially this new, like, market because they were trying to push their units are different, and everyone that's not as renovated is getting stuck, but I've seen some one-bedroom apartments that are having everything still sitting.
Yeah.
Like, what do you what like, is one-bedroom apartments really right now, like, very, very tough?
I think people underwrote large deals strictly on Section 8. And that's really tough, even in great times, to be able to do, 500 units and rely on 500 one-bedroom voucher tenants just to be there is.
It's only 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the voucher market is also kind of cyclical. You'll see a flood of 3-bedroom vouchers, then you'll see a flood of 1 bedrooms, then you'll see a flood of 4 bedrooms. So 1 bedrooms are the most common voucher size. The question is, how fast are they issuing them? How many tenants are waiting for those 1 bedrooms? How many tenants are moving? And then you have an immense amount of inventory. You have West Side. I mean, you and I know these deals, East Side and West Side, where you literally have probably thousands, not even hundred, hundreds,
Yeah.
thousands. You have so many units that price their units aspirationally for what they think they can get, which vouchers may be the only, tenant source that may come close to those rent estimates, which they're not going to hit. And they're too far in the game to take that 1,500 and lower it to that 1,250, do what they need to do to lease. So I think they're getting stuck. And then when the market constricts and you have fewer 1-bedroom vouchers and fewer vouchers overall, landlords do what they have to do, meaning a lot of 2-bedroom houses we never or very rarely would do a full house as a 1 bedroom, was there 1 bedroom and den or 1 bedroom and 2 dens. That has become, standard right now. So, if we have a 2-bedroom house that hasn't leased in a week or two, and it may be a little on the smaller side or may only have 1 bathroom or may not have a finished basement, that's becoming a 1+ den. So word travels fast. So once tenants find out that there are ample 1+ den housing, full house options, even townhomes, for them, they view it as a step up from an apartment, and they'll gravitate more towards that, or they'll have it in their mind. Let's say, hey, my friend or somebody I know got a full house with their 1-bedroom voucher. I want the same thing. Um,
So the remedy is poison.
Correct. It's tough. Yeah, it's a tough spot. You wanna renovate your property, you want to attract great tenants. Everyone kinda does the same thing. The last 2 years or year, there's been a ton of inventory hitting the market
Turned
that
over.
it was priced at, where the regular rental market may not be able to get to. Um, and then you see the result of it where you have, I don't know, 2,000 units in receivership, and, some others hopefully not, but some others may be on the way because of leasing issues and vacancy. I haven't really seen landlords cut their prices like they need to. Maybe they can't. I'm not the one paying their bills. I don't know what they have going on, but and that's back to my original point, is just understanding what you can charge for your units these days. And personally, any deals that we're looking at, on the acquisition side, we're making sure that we're being literally taking rents back to 2018 and seeing if those numbers work. And if they don't, then it may not be the right deal right now. So you have to be really mindful of what rents, you know, what are attainable rents, what's realistic for you to get. And I think you'll lease much faster. And if you're conservative on your rents, even if you don't see that huge voucher influx that you need to lease, if your rents are in line with market, you'll be able to find qualified market tenants at those prices. If the average affordable unit in Baltimore is $1,200 or $1,300, and the average income in Baltimore is $2,600 or $3,000 for your basic, $15, $18 an hour job, then your market at 1250 is going to be a lot bigger than your market at 1500.
Correct.
And that's where a lot of these one bedroom prices have been, in that $1,500 to $1,600 range.
No, you gotta cut it.
And then vouchers become the only option. And then when that slows down or disappears, then that's the result.
I've been hearing about this delinquency insurance for market tenants. Have you heard about this?
Like Rhino, or they pay, it's an insurance policy basically against.
Delinquency.
No, I'm talking about damages. I haven't seen the one about delinquency.
I've seen a program someone sent me. I was gonna ask you about it because I'm not sure what it is or whatever, but I've heard about this insurance specifically for delinquency that covers lost rent, which to me just sounds ridiculous.
I've heard about a lot of these programs over the years. Most recent, I heard about one, tenant conducted showings, where you have, specialized locks. They're softwares that do it, property management softwares that have integrated it, and they allow tenants to do their own showings. Basically, they have to sign up. They put in their name, number. They have to put in a credit card, upload their ID, and allows them to do the showing themselves. So they've been touted, like none of these things over the years, and there've been many over the years of these different types of ideas and technology. Nothing works in Baltimore. It's a different market. It's a different clientele. Self showings would be a disaster. Oh my god,
Squatters. Forget
squatters,
about it.
break-ins, coming back, leaving a window open. Like, I can't even imagine the liability of even exploring that for our own company. Um, and again, I've seen that. There was I think it was called Rhino, that offered that same sort of, kind of like a bond
Yes.
for your deposit, and I assume it's kind of along the same lines with the delinquency thing. So, in theory, it's a great idea, and I'm sure in some markets it works really well, and especially with Class A or B plus A markets, it works. I'm sure, you know, peachily, whatever you want to call it. But in Baltimore, I think the companies would see very, very quickly that it just doesn't work here.
Correct, correct. And I think the main point of all this is I have people ask me, like, "Why are you reporting such information? Like, why don't you just give the information other people are sending out there that rents are going up and everything's peachy and like you said, the peachy, right? Like everything's great." And I think it's because at the end of the day, this is what I'm seeing. And if I want to sell something to someone or try to rent something for someone in your case, and actually be successful long term with that client, you just gotta be honest. This is what's going on. So yeah, there are deals, there's opportunities that you could buy or then rent out, but you have to know what to buy and you have to have the right underwriting expectations when you are doing it, right? If you're buying a deal on Fulton Avenue, maybe underwrite 2 months for vacancies if that's even enough. Right? So like I think that's the important part of all this. People are very concerned and confused right now, and rightfully so, because the housing department's confused, and that just bleeds everywhere. So, I think we're just gonna have to see over the next few months where everything goes, but if you're an owner, I think it's so important to try to keep your tenants. I had a building that I was selling where I had a voucher tenant for a one-bedroom that was paying $1,500 in not a great area apartment, and the tenant was complaining that they don't like something about the unit and whatever, and in my mind, like, obviously, I wanted to go call the owner and tell him, "Listen, you have a 1,500 voucher?" When I started seeing the market going down for these type of apartments, like, do whatever it takes to keep this tenant happy.
Whatever you gotta do.
Yeah,
And
that
did he?
well, no, he didn't,
He
but
did?
he did not. He definitely didn't
Yeah.
after that call because he's overwhelmed, right? Which understandably so, but that just bleeds into what you were saying, which is the receivership right now is increasing. CMBS delinquency increased 6.9%, which is the most it's the increase per month in 9 years. So multifamily right now is struggling, specifically in Baltimore, where it's such a unique market, and you have to know what you're doing, and you have to hire the right leasing agent. And I think what I like is that it's just an honest opinion. I don't like I could be wrong, but if you can't lease a unit, you just won't take it.
Yeah.
Like you said about the 4 by 4.
I mean, well, we also have we're our landlord clients, we're fiduciary technically, right? We have to have their best legal interests at heart,
Correct.
and vacant unit and people that truly value leasing and understand what we do, which are real operators. It's usually the not so serious guys that don't really appreciate or value leasing. It's just a liability until you got a signed lease. It really is, and that's what turns it into an asset. So. I think you nailed it on the head also. A lot of these distressed deals in all markets were out-of-state buyers and out-of-state operators. So there's a great opportunity to really if you understand and really know your market very well, there are going to be a lot of opportunities within that market because of the out-of-state and out-of-town, investors that didn't do so well on those deals for local guys that really understand the market and understand how to underwrite conservatively, understand even, like, the insurance cost in each market, maintenance just everything, just having a
Every
full picture, will create a lot of buying opportunities for local operators. And I think the glass has been shattered on Baltimore, and up until a year ago, everybody thought it was really easy to come down here and be all in for a house for 120, 130, appraise at 250, rent it for 2 grand, and, times 100. That just doesn't work, and people, like you said, your client people are starting to really see that now, and it's, with the foreclosures are rising, the receivership on the multifamily side, the foreclosures on the single family side. So, it's a better time now than ever to understand that, to use a specialist in whatever it is that you're trying to do, real estate-wise. If you're trying to buy a multifamily deal in Baltimore, you call Yankee. If you're trying to, lease a voucher unit, you call Jack. Um and understand what's going on in your market. And out of state, you can understand a different market and know another market, but if you don't live there, just my opinion, if you don't, I'm sure there are guys out there that you know, have found ways to do it, but in Baltimore specifically, because of the uniqueness of the market and constantly changing landscape as far as vouchers, rents, and regulations and programs and new vouchers coming, going, new programs opening, closing. You really have to know what you're doing here and just understanding the rents, and always be 6 months ahead, understanding what's coming down the pipeline. Read, it's all public information. Yeah, you can read a lot of this stuff, and so few people do. Read the plans. If you want to, go crazy on the voucher side and underwrite it on the voucher side, look at what they're planning to do next year. If you want to do a Class A, look at what the Class A has been doing here, and then just underwrite conservatively. So to your point, being conservative, understanding your local market, and capitalizing on those opportunities is it's a great time. It's a great time right now to do so. And it's terrible that all these other operators haven't done so well and have lost money. Their investors have lost money, and their lenders are probably gonna take haircuts. But
Yep.
it's just a good lesson for guys that are growing now, guys that are just getting into the game, um, how to do it. Like they've shown you, this is what not to do. Look at it and go forth and do. So
Correct.
that's I'm really excited for the next year to see what happens, and hopefully all of our local Baltimore investors that understand the market can really capitalize.
100%. Jack, it's been great. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for
I
having
think we
me.
probably have to do another one of these in 6 months where everything's holding then.
You do one of these, one a month. I know, still never be able to really fully grasp everything that's going on with them, but I appreciate you having me. It's always a great time with you.
For sure. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in next time for the next episode. And until then, I hope you have success and you will be on the up and up and not in receivership.
Amen to that.